Welcome, everyone, to another in the series of podcasts, Interpreting in Healthcare, brought to you by the Standards and Training Committee, of which I am chair, of the National Council on Interpreting in Healthcare. I'm really pleased to have a very special guest with us here today. Someone who has the long view, the current view, and the future view of where things are heading for us as interpreters, especially in light of certification and the newly tightened requirements to the ACA. So I'm really excited to introduce all of you to my friend, my colleague, my work buddy, my fellow social justice warrior, Natalya Mytareva, who is the executive director of the Certification Commission for Healthcare Interpreters, that's CCHI, and she's also an NCCA commissioner. Her specialties include being a nonprofit manager, an interpreter trainer, a cultural competence trainer and consultant, a Russian English translator in the past, and an interpreter. But now you had one of the most important entities in our professional world. So you started your career as an instructor of interpretation and translation. So important, I think, to have a deep understanding of both worlds at Volgograd State University in Russia in 1991. And then in 2000, you served as the communications programs director of the International Institute of Akron Incorporated, a nonprofit agency where you coordinated the interpreting and translating services and the interpreter and cultural competence training programs. On a local level, Natalya has been teaching courses to healthcare interpreters in Ohio. You're involved in issues of equal access to healthcare interpreters for LEP. You're also the author and instructor of courses for interpreters of languages of lesser diffusion. And you've delivered a variety of presentations. If you've been to a conference, oh God, and the regional ones, I'm going to get lost now, Mati and Umsha and all of the others. You have seen Natalya present on a variety of topics. You're currently the executive director at Certification Commission of Healthcare Interpreters. And like I mentioned, the NCCA commissioner. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And I'm very happy to turn things over to you with my very first question after saying, welcome. It's good to
Well,
see you, Natalya.
thank you, Eliana, and thank you, NCHC, for having this wonderful series to when we can just talk and be merry, especially, sometimes when we do formal presentations, we don't have the opportunity to say all the stuff that we really want to say. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, I'm really pleased that you're here. We have a nice, relaxed conversation about the stuff that we're passionate about. And we have an audience that's just as passionate. They wouldn't have found this podcast if they weren't an NCIHC member or working in language access or on the listserv or interested in becoming certified or interested in knowing how to supervise properly an interpreter services program. What kind of credentials do I need in my staff? Like all of those people are coming to this podcast, and it is serving the purpose of trying to widen our scope to reach to everyone who works in language access and not just limit it to interpreters, both spoken and sign. So I'm going to hit you with our first question, which is looking back, and you've been there since day one in terms of CCHI. Looking back, what are you most proud of?
Well, the first question is how back do you want me to look, right? And I want to start, let's just limit my looking back to this country where I moved to in 1996. And one of the first things I'm proud of that I have worked for a refugee resettlement agency because getting to know the path to freedom of refugees changes your life. It truly does. I am an immigrant myself, but I chose to come here. And I studied English back in my country. So I came here prepared. And I have an American family who welcome me and who supports me. And to have individuals who lose everything overnight, not through the fault of their own, either because of their beliefs, their passions, or because some government decides to attack your country and they have to move to a country where they maybe not even wanted to go to, right? They didn't learn English to move to this country, and they start rebuilding their lives. And to see that moment, they see their past, some of them are work very hard. It to reinvent themselves. Some continue what they were hoping to do with their lives, but to see that, it just changes you on the level that you understand no matter what you personally experienced, you're never going to match that loss, that grief that they've been through. And just truly seeing the human spirit at its best. That's what working with refugee does. And at least it did for me. And so 13 years working at the International Institute of Akron has been my, you know, are my years I cherish mostly. Uh, but also on the professional level, of course, I'm proud to be one of the founding commissioners of CCHI. I think if that was the final piece in the profession building process that we, each one of us interpreters, have done through our careers, and you have been at the very beginning too. So it is very important to know that we put that final punctuation mark, I hope it's exclamation mark, to the building of the healthcare interpreting profession. And now for the last 12, 13 years, we are really improving and fine tuning it and looking out into the future and how we will continue. Um, and within CCHI's years, all right, I am very proud of the fact that from the very beginning and for all these 13 years, we continue to subscribe to the principles of transparency,
Mm.
accountability, and uh, inclusion, equity, and diversity. Uh, this I specifically changed the order of this term because for us, when we started developing certification, we started thinking about inclusion from day one and equity because we wanted to create certification that is available on the first day for interpreters of any language. And that's what we did at that level in 2010. And now we are moving forward to the next step, meaning that it will be a certification that tests your skills that is available for interpreters of any language. And I think that's a very important and really a revolutionary moment for our profession because we're not going to rank languages in terms of like this one gets to get bilingual exam first, this one next. We now could bring everybody to the same level by having this new credential that will start in January that is called CoreCHI-Performance. So, and the last but not least moment of my pride is being elected to be on the National Commission for Certifying Agencies, NCCA. I'm like you, interpreter, translator, but I never thought that I would be serving on the board of the organization in the United States that accredits all professional certifications. That, I will be reviewing certification programs for nurse executives, for financial planners, for architects, for, you name it, art therapists, you name it. Every profession that has accreditation comes through the review process by the commissioners of NCCA, and learning from these organizations and also understanding that we, the interpreters, are on equal footing with every profession out there is truly rewarding. So by being there, I represent not only CCHI, but I represent interpreters, and I hear how many of my fellow commissioners now start respecting how difficult our exam is compared to many other certification programs, because we have this skill component that is something that in 2010, when Zoom did not exist, was revolutionary. Because remember, we had this exam online, recording at the computer with a headset since 2010. And that is truly, an impressive achievement for our profession. So I think I'll stop here unless you want me to continue with the things I'm proud for other people, because there's so many colleagues that I'm proud of knowing and working with. You are one of them, and many of the interpreters are subject matter experts. We just finished two projects of updating the exams and also of developing the new exam. And my God, these are such talented individuals in these groups that every year when we convene new group, I'm like, wow, so much talent in our field. So I'm proud to be part of our field and part of this conversation.
I'm so excited there. I went like this because I used the finger method to remember 3 things I want to remember, 4 things. There's 2 points in what you talked about in the past. The first is the new credential that I'm going to round back to in a second. And the second one is I'm almost having what we say in Portuguese is dor de cotovelo, which you say is like a goodwill but slightly envious feeling of someone, because you've got this exposure to all of these different credentials and the knowledge of how these are developed and maintained and reassessed, that you then bring back and share within the Certification Commission for Healthcare Interpreters. So our credentialing process is only going to benefit from that. It's so exciting to be developed, to be exposed really to all these different types of new knowledge. At least that gets me very excited about things that I didn't even know that I didn't know. And now I'm learning how to assess or create and develop these processes that were unfamiliar to me before. That can be very, very exciting to me to work with. So I think what an unexpected benefit from your work with NCCA is going to be felt by every working interpreter and by CCHI's ability to continue to perfect the assessment and certification that it awards to interpreters. That is just such great news. It must be very exciting for you. Do you meet in person for NCCA?
We have both. The first year is I just finished my second year on board, and the first year we had virtual meetings, and then this year we had in-person meetings, and the meetings are truly, the work happens as always in projects in between the meetings, when we actually review, and at the meetings we discuss each program, and everyone has has an opportunity to share, and then we propose a recommendation either to accredit or give a probation period or deny accreditation, and the same thing with renewals. And it's truly a group of professionals that we have the psychometricians, which is always interesting to hear their conversations, because they have that special view of the exam process from the lens of statistics. And then we have administrative reviewers like me, who are also directors of their organizations, and that's where we actually share the understanding of what the good governance of a certification process is, right? That you have the oversight, that there is no undue influence by any specific group, that you're truly independent. And there are different models. There are models when there is an association that has a certification process, but the major requirement here is that certification body should truly be independent. They should be in full control of their exam. They cannot just take exam from another entity and say that, well, prove that exam, and now we become the certifying body. That doesn't work like that in the testing industry. There are so many other aspects that it takes a lot of work to maintain a credit certification program. And I don't talk about that often because there's so much technical understanding going behind it, but just enumerate a couple of steps that are big steps, like having to have job task analysis
That's a
every
big project.
5 to 7 years, and we just completed ours. But what happens afterwards is we need to update each exam that we have based on that job task analysis. And when we update each exam, we need to have a new process of setting the passing point. In other words, how many questions do you need to answer correctly? Or on the exam that is skill based, our oral performance exam, you need to set a passing point, how many points for interpreting or correctly you need to get to pass that exam. So, and then after that only you have your you know uh, quiet life for 2 years, because then in 2 years you have to update the forms again. You cannot just develop the exam and keep the same content over and over again, because what happens is what's called I have a new term I like, is item drift, which means that over the years, if you have the same question over and over, that it becomes easier, because eventually we all pick up on what you know the trainers pick up on it, and the individuals among themselves probably talk even though they shouldn't. So, and you notice that if, for example, 10 years ago there were 7 people who answered this question correctly, now 10 years later all 10 people answer this question correctly. So that means that you really are not measuring the knowledge as you did 10 years ago, and that's why you need to update the exams. And that's continuous, because we have by now we have what, 4 exams: core CHI, Spanish CHI, Arabic, and Mandarin CHIs, and we're adding the new ETOE exam. So there'll be 5 exams. Each needs to be updated every 2 years. You cannot do it at the same time, because you cannot clone people. So you have to have this staggered process. So the whole year from the inside for me looks totally different than what you see me doing at the conferences, because I'm at a different step, a different exam on every single month. And that's really, a very important process that keeps us, the main difference between certification and any other exam is that it has to be current and reflect the current profession. And if you're not updating it, then how can you say that, right? You have to have new people look at it. You have to have new people bring new questions to it. So that's what makes it such a rewarding experience, and knowing that there are other programs out there who are doing the same thing for nurses, doctors, lawyers, and we are fully professional and not a occupation that is like service industry, where you get your paycheck and you don't really need to do anything else with it. You just have your job description, but that's about it, right? So we're very different animal than anybody else, and it's good to be
Very.
among other ones who go through the same processes.
And that's something I wish was better understood both by interpreters and people that hire interpreters. Just because your language service provider, your agency that you work for, gave you a vocabulary test or gave you a slightly more thought out test is not a certification. A certificate of training does not equal a certification. An in-house language assessment does not equal certification. Why? It's not just because you've spent a lot more money, but the time and the effort and the science of creating valid tests that measure the actual tasks needed, the abilities needed to perform the job description. It's just, when you go back, there is so much underpinning that final experience of taking that test that is completely absent from all of the other in-house assessments that are out there that may give you an indication of somebody's fluency, but not if they understand the profession. And that's what I'm really, really happy you were able to talk about in such detail for people to just get an inkling. I mean, you're just scratching the surface of all the work that goes into determining what that job description is, then doing the job task analysis, how by actually getting responses from people that are actively out there doing the work. And an N of 10 or 100 is not enough to provide valid metrics for developing even an update to your job description, never mind content that is going to be on a written or oral proficiency test. So thank you for that, because I have that conversation every time I go to a conference, trying to get people to understand there is a difference between an accredited and a non-accredited program. There is no relationship between certificate and certification in terms of what those words mean. And we have to keep banging that gong, as well as continue to do the work that we're doing to kind of evolve as the profession evolves. And language is a living thing.
Mhm.
And biology, we certainly know, mutates. So none of this can stay static. It has to evolve and try to keep pace with life. And maybe that's the challenge that I enjoy the most. So I do want to round back circuitously to that other point you mentioned and tie it to my next question. And the other point that you mentioned is the new CCHI credential. And my next question is, currently, what do you see as your biggest challenge? Or I might change it to, what are you most excited about currently? Because I'd like to hear more about this new credential.
Yeah, I like that you changed the question because, I always view challenges as opportunities. And, today we had our staff meeting virtually. And one of the things I was like, what they were grateful for the previous year. And we're grateful for making mistakes, which were big mistakes and on which we learned. And I look forward to new year to looking to new mistakes, which hopefully will teach us something and that we will, confirm to us that we're human, right? And so the same thing with this, new opportunities and new excitement. So the new credential that is called CoreCHI-Performance, CoreCHI-P, or you can call it core chip, like chocolate chip, but this is core chip or chip in your, computer brain here. So, but anyway, jokes aside, that consists of three components. And I want to stress out that it is two exams, but it's three big components because from the public view perspective, what this credential will give is first, it gives the assurance that you are proficient in the language of service of your patients. And that will be achieved through the language proficiency for interpreters requirement. Many of you have just completed that survey, language proficiency for interpreters, and based on that, the new, requirements on language proficiency for language other than English, LOT, will come into effect early next year. The second component is everybody's familiar with that is passing the CoreCHI exam because the CoreCHI exam is still the foundation because it tests the knowledge about interpreting. And we see it with many candidates who come from other language-related professions like translators, court interpreters. When they come and take this exam, they realize that we actually do have a body of knowledge that is very, very different than the body of knowledge of court interpreters, interpreters now in education. That's why they're developing their certification now, right? Because they understand that they have a different body of knowledge than we do.
Absolutely.
And many of them are certified through CCHI now, but hopefully in several years to come, they will get their own certification. And if they don't do both, then they will not need ours. They will stay with the educational certification. And then the third component is that most, exciting thing, the most exciting challenge and opportunity is the English to English performance exam. that is based on the study that we have conducted during the pandemic in 2020, 2021, and that showed that there's certain skills, cognitive skills of interpreters that could be tested through just one language. And because English is what we all need as interpreters in this country, we have this exam developed in English. But the future is limitless because we could develop a similar exam if, when we are successful with this, when we have this, credential launched and have candidates, pass it, take and pass it, and when we have a good body of credentials, CoreCHI performance certificates, we could then develop it in Spanish. And you know what that will mean for this country is that we'll be able then to test the indigenous language interpreters
Oh,
in
that's great.
Spanish if they're capable, if they have those interpreting skills, right? Because we cannot create language interpreting language tests for Quiche, Kanja, Balmain, right? It's just impossible. Not enough subject matter experts, not enough raters. But if we have the language proficiency and they have the Spanish exam, we could solve that issue, right? And then move on to other issues that we have because we are the country that truly is diverse, and we have so many languages, and we have the ability, as one of the richest country in the world, we should have the ability to resolve this problem and be a model for the world on how these things could tackle, so people from other countries could come to us and get our knowledge and share and understand how testing could be done. But that is like way into the future. We didn't even talk about the future. We're talking about the current challenges. So the current challenge is to encourage interpreters who are CoreCHI certified to take this new exam and earn the new credential now, right? Because
Sign me up.
oh, I will. Unfortunately, I cannot take it because I'm so involved in the development of it. But and I'm a CoreCHI certificate myself. But why do we need it now, right? Our testing actually is going to take place. The first administration will be from March 14th through February, through April 12th. But um, for any exam to develop, you need to have the first cohort of test takers
Right.
in enough numbers so we can run the statistical analysis and set the passing point in a scientific manner. And so if we don't have enough candidates, then we'll have to wait till the next testing windows, and those individuals who do will not get their scores until we get enough numbers. So
Ouch. Yep.
to help the profession, we need to all get together and do this heavy work, even if you are afraid. Now, the perk is that, first of all, we, like everybody else, when you do the first administration, there is a very discounted price. We also won't punish those who fail it. They could go back and keep the CoreCHI certification still, so they won't lose it. And we'll keep
Oh,
this
that's good.
process for a
Yeah.
couple of years so that the profession could settle and we can, all be comfortable with this new credential. And then we'll give people a year or so until they have to take it, right? So we're going this in step, but we are going to appeal to those interpreters of languages who even are not CoreCHI yet, but they will need to take the CoreCHI exam to get to this new credential. But you can take CoreCHI exam within 2 weeks if you submit the application, you schedule it online or at your test center, and you're done. So we truly need our interpreters of all these languages: Portuguese, Russian, um, Vietnamese, Hmong, Burmese, Kinyarwanda, all of those languages, Nepali, come and take this exam and the first testing windows to help us with, finalizing that exam, because without these numbers of candidates, we simply will have to wait. And
Right.
that's our challenge, and that's the excitement. We will have a very extensive explanation of everything, what's on the exam. We'll have the free practice exam, but we also are going to hold the new credential launch summit on February 11th. It's a virtual summit. It's free, and those who are certified could earn continuing education. So it's a win-win for anybody to learn about the new credential, and also for we invite to it Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin certificates as well, because they could also take that exam. I mean, I don't know how much it will will matter to them to add another credential to after their name, but that's always an option. But also they will learn how they could that what paths they could have to have other opportunities for continuing education, because ultimately we want to have a universal understanding, and that's another challenge, that the we need to maintain and upgrade our own skills continuously. Your phone gets upgraded how many times a year,
Yes.
right? Automatically, we humans need to upgrade our skills to keep up with the developments. And the upgrade, the easiest one, is not about webinars about ethics or medical terminology. Those are definitely the core of our profession, but we sometimes forget that the actual bedrock, the foundation, is our language proficiency. And we all have, most of us, let's put it this way, no, we have brilliant individuals who have equality between languages, but most of us have one language stronger than the other. And for me, when I came to this country in 96, of course, my Russian was the dominant and English was here. But now I feel that my English is the dominant, because I could not give this interview in Russian. I can tell you that. I don't know how to speak about CoreCHI-P in Russian. I've never worded that in Russia. So I'll be rusty. I mean, after we talk for a couple of hours, I probably could get back on track. But that's what I'm talking about. So how can we create these opportunities for those for whom English is still not a dominant language? The E2E and having the trainings around that will help strengthen all the profession, not just the core CHI and core CHIP certificates, but because there are many individuals who are Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, who pass our exam, who still need to continue practicing their English and conversion skills. And that's what we hope to achieve with launching this credential and then talking about it, explaining it. One thing I want also to mention about the new credential is the fact that the scored activities on it are English to English, but we have one last activity on the exam, one last question, so to say, which is going to be their speech in language other than English. The
That's great.
candidates will get an image that they will need to describe, and we will start building the library of these recordings for continuing education purposes. Let's say we get 4 Burmese certificates will have 4 recordings within their next renewal process, 4 years. They will be asked to listen to somebody else's recording and evaluate it, right? Because for Spanish and even Mandarin and Arabic, it's easier to find training opportunities in that language. But there are not that many courses in Burmese, Vietnamese, Hmong, Portuguese, right? And this would be our opportunity and our commitment to show that this credential is not about English, it's about interpreting. And the credential, passing the test, is only a point in our career, right? Maintaining the credentials, continuous training, coming back for more and more, that's what the career is about. And so we are committed to keeping it bilingual. And eventually,
Building
when we
that
have
knowledge.
many of them, we could
Yes.
then develop the specific Portuguese, Burmese, etc. So, but we have to start building that by these small steps. And I'm sure 10 years from now, if we have this interview, that course CHIP would look different. And I'm excited about that too.
Well, that's perfect, because my next question is, looking forward, what would you love to see happen?
Whew, have everyone certified? Can I have that?
Yeah, Aladdin lamp.
Well, we, the commission, from first commissioners who started this organization in 2009 to the current ones who just joined us, we believe that the certification is just the entry point, and that's why our certification is entry level certification, right? We truly want that individuals who work in healthcare are individuals that have proven abilities to interpret. And we know right now we have 5,000. This year we reached the milestone of having 5,000 certified interpreters by CCHI. Yes, that was an amazing milestone for us to reach. But you all know that there are many more individuals who are working side by side, these 5,000, who are paid often the same rate and call themselves also interpreters, and who may not be able to actually do interpreting because they speak the languages nobody can, assess. They may not know the code and abide by the code of ethics, and yet that is still tolerated. So my big wish is to bring everybody to the central level certification, so then we can get creative, because interpreting in mental health, interpreting in pediatrics, interpreting in speech pathology are so much different. These settings, three settings, are so much different than interpreting everywhere else, that they deserve to have specialization. And we deserve to have also ladder, vertical ladder, right, of advanced, of masters who could then be mentors, right? So those are the things we cannot do until we have everybody certified first. And to
Right.
me also, the future is in understanding we have two challenges. Those are challenges. I mean, they are opportunities too, but they're true challenges that I believe our profession faces and will be facing for a long time. They're both external factors. One is the effect that immigration policies in the United States have
Mhm.
on us, because we only exist if there are people for whom we need to interpret. And in this respect, we truly need to be part of the DEI movement. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is what makes us strong, because the whole society right now understands the value of these, principles, and social justice often is added to it, and we become the Jedi rather than DEI's proponents. And we are bringing diversity, right, from to that. Without immigrants, refugees, without interpreters, the DI concept becomes binary. And we need to make sure that it is, diverse itself, and being, part of the conversations at the hospital, at the association, within our profession is very important. We also bring equity for our patients, and we make them included in conversations, from simple things like being, during the clinical rounds. Many hospitals, and you don't interpret, right? You just say, oh, it's the professor is teaching someone. But the English speaking patient hears what is being taught,
Exactly.
right? And an English speaking patient has Google too. They understand many terms that those, residents and professors use. So let's not think that our people, right, for whom we interpret, that they cannot use Google or whatever search engine they're about. They deserve to hear what is said about them in their presence, and we can only do it when we are masters of simultaneous interpreting. That's the part, and when we also show that we can do it. Because, of course, nobody is going to wait for us when we'll do it in consecutive mode. It's just not, efficient.
It's
And
not
that
how
brings me.
rounds work.
That's right. That's right. And that brings me to that second external factor that is challenging is technology, right? If you think about AI and all these wonderful statements that all these companies make, that tomorrow you will be able to have this app that will interpret everything for you. Well, we all know that's not true. They know that is not true, but the marketing departments need to sell their advances in technology somehow, right? And that's how it's presented to the public. And we need to start looking at what differentiates us from the app. And those two things, on the technical level, it's simultaneous interpreting, because these apps will that are imitating human speech are nowhere close to being accurate, right? And they're nowhere close to being accurate in the simultaneous mode, because it just
That's
takes
tough.
so much extra linguistic experience, right, to be effective when you are, doing it simultaneously, that the app, by just stringing the words in sequential mode, will simply not be able to do that, right? So that's one aspect that differentiates. And the other one, as I said, is already being, part of the DEI movement and initiatives, because those values, nobody is going to replace with an app. The app cannot replicate uh, access, equal access to healthcare, inclusion, and diversity. These are the values that we human beings can bring to the table. So that those values will prevent us being replaced by a software. So we really need to be educated about that, and it's important for all of us to consciously seek understanding of these two factors, right? If you are a staff interpreter, you need to make sure that you understand what DI initiatives you have in your organization and be at the table when they're brought up. And, when you hear about clinical trials in your organization, in your hospitals, right? You need to ask the question, how many languages do you need interpreters for? Not how many interpreters, how many languages? Because a clinical trial is only good its worth is if it's not about only white people and if it's about people of different physical composition. So that means all our patients need to be part of those clinical
Right, or
trials.
even a clinical trial that has mostly white men. I mean,
Exactly.
women
It
go
could be even
undiagnosed with
narrower.
cardiac
That's
problems because there's not enough
exactly.
study done on women.
That's right. That's
But
right. Men,
all of this contributes
one,
to knowledge
revelation.
and development and assessment and introducing this new credential, as well as the education that goes hand in hand with the needed education that goes hand in hand with being able to attain these credentials or these levels of proficiency. How do you feel about the idea of licensing after certification? And then I see us moving towards requiring more hours of training, more programs that progress beyond being a certificate program to an associate degree to hopefully a bachelor's degree, so that the US can catch up with Europe and have advanced degrees in interpreting, not just translation, not just literatures of other countries, but in the actual field of interpreting. What do you think about having interpreters move to certification and also being licensed by their state, like
Well, I
nurses,
mean, it
doctors?
seems that it's definitely will put us on the same level as social workers, right? As nurses, as doctors. Uh, and I would welcome that if we also see the increase in pay, right? But
I
that's
like
kind
the
of is
nuanced answer.
that's right. My thing is like it's all great to apply the same standards, but if those same standards will result in us having to carry higher burden, then I would wait. I'm not saying, and that's why I'm thinking that, I think we have made a lot of progress in establishing ourselves as a profession. Now we, especially, if you think of this current development with the magnet designations in nursing, right? They are requiring to certain one of the parameters is how many certified individuals like nurses and technical allied health professionals are there in the hospital. They can also add now interpreters to that pool, right? And to earn the magnet, maintain magnet designation. So we are recognized as a valuable addition to the corporate culture. Now the next step for us is, okay, let get paid at the same level as others in the healthcare
That makes a lot of
delivery are
sense.
paid. Yeah.
Before you
So
ask me
because
to
with
spend
licensure,
more money to get
that's right, with
licensed,
licensure you have
please
to pay the licensing
pay
fee.
me what
That's
I'm worth.
right. That's
Yes.
right. And I think it's reasonable to understand that and say that, okay, if we will establish state requirements that the minimum wage for interpreters is X, then we could have the licensure, right? But if that is, and I'm not sure how realistic the state will be in pursuing that, because we are the profession unlike any other. Well, soon we'll have our other allied professionals joining us, because we have a lot of us are virtual, right? So we live in one state, we work in the other state on a minutely, daily, hourly basis, right? So of course with the telehealth, this will level the field too. So, but that's kind of what my short view of the licensure is. I'm practical. I'm sorry.
Practical is good. Well, Natalia, I could be here for another 40 minutes. We've gone over a little bit, but there's no way I could stop the flow of ideas. I always enjoy our conversations, your depth of knowledge from studying it, understanding it conceptually, working it, understanding how sometimes the reality of working it does not meet up with that textbook concept, and then figuring out how to make it work in the real world and how to roll it out and get people to join in. That's what I most admire about you, and really enjoy working with you and look forward to being one of the first guinea pigs on the
Oh, I look forward to that too, Eliana,
core.
and it's always a
Thank you.
pleasure. Working
So
with you is always a pleasure. I know we'll be working together on many more projects.
I certainly hope so. Thank you, everyone who came and listened today. As you heard from one of the top experts, subject matter experts in the field of interpreter training and credentialing, as well as the war for social justice and language access that we are fighting every day when we show up and do our jobs. Join us next month for another in a long series, I hope, of podcasts from the National Council, sponsored by my work group, the Standards and Training Committee. And we'll see you again in the next episode of Interpreting for Healthcare. Bye.
Bye.